Hello and welcome to this special broadcast held on the margins of the 9th edition of the African Peace and Security Annual Conference, coming to you under the theme Rethinking Security in a Changing Africa. I'm pleased to be joined by Air Commodore David Akrong, the acting commandant of the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Air Commodore Akrong, thank you for being with us and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Air Commodore, you have a wealth of experience in peace and security issues in Africa. And this includes your experience with the aviation, the military, and peacekeeping as well. And this includes also experience with the AU Department of Peace and Security. So just to kick off this conversation, I wanted to know and get from you a sense of how you would describe the current state of peace and security landscape in Africa, and what are the changes that you're seeing in the recent years.
Thank you very much for the question. Let me say that, first of all, I'm very happy to be here. I was here last year, but more involved in a panel discussion. This time, I think you managed to grab me into this room to offer some insight into some of the changing dynamics within the geopolitical landscape, especially how it affects Africa and peacekeeping. Let me say that over the period, there's been a global shift. When our forefathers, I believe, established what we now have as the African Union, when they came out with all the African peace and security architecture to manage peace and security on the continent, later did they imagine how we'll be moving from the traditional way of dealing with interstate conflict to what we are faced with now, the changing dynamics. We are experiencing a wide range of terrorism across the continent. We are also having some unconstitutional change. Even though that was foreseen, it is not the way it is happening right now. From Niger to Burkina Faso, Mali, we've seen the change. The latest was Gabon and also Niger. But let me say that the other issue we are facing is the geopolitical tensions across the world, and the way those countries that we depended on, the US, France, China, Russia, and how the interplay between these countries are also affecting the way we do business. Don't forget, we count on them for their funding. So if they are having their own issues, naturally it will affect us. But also the fact that we are also experiencing what we call the non-traditional security threats. Cyber security is not something that we envisage. It is here with us. Development of AI brings with it its own challenges. And also, we also have the issue of climate security, climate change, and its attendant problems. So yes, there's been a big shift that overall is affecting the way we do business.
You mentioned a lot of things in this first question regarding the evolution of threats, how our forefathers never envisioned how interstate conflicts will evolve, and how we'll have new and emerging threats and non-traditional, I would say, security threats like we're seeing today. So in this context, are the frameworks, the legacy frameworks we're using, like the African peace and security architecture and the African governance architecture, you mentioned the unconstitutional changes of government, still relevant?
They are. Like I said, rightly so, there was a thinking that went into their formation and the way we expect them to go. Things have changed. So naturally what we have to do is to be more adaptive to the situation. We cannot use 19th century solution for 21st century challenges and address them. So while they are relevant, we have to begin to be shifting the focus, the way we manage and use them. So are they relevant? Yes, ever more relevant than now, because these are established structures. We have to reorientate the way they do business. The AU itself you realize has what we call the regional economic communities. Now, they form the building blocks of the African Union. The African Union can it by itself deploy troops. It has to rely on the regional economic communities. That's the regional blocks. And the regional blocks by themselves also have to rely on the sovereign countries. So we need to begin to have the discussions. We need to begin to talk. We need to begin to train. We need to engage in dialogues. And I think that's where centers like the Kofi Annan Peace and Security Training Center comes in. Because we offer training by ourselves, looking at emerging and current trends. We carry out education, but more importantly, we carry out applied research and innovation into peace and security. We don't stop there. We carry on, also do policy, dialogue, and advocacy. So I think, yes, the structures are still relevant as we see them today, but we need to begin to slowly bring the awareness that we need to shift our focus, change the mindset in which the way we address, because the threats we are used to are no more the threats we have on ground. So we need to begin to be more adaptive. So yes, they are relevant. We need them on the ground. We just have to capacitate them in a way that they remain relevant to the current emerging threats.
To stay in this theme of tools and the realities that they operate in, maybe we can discuss also the theme of UN peacekeeping. We've seen in the recent years drawdown in UN peacekeeping missions, especially in Africa. We've seen what happened with MINUSMA, MONUSCO also being discussed, drawdown in MONUSCO also being discussed. And now we've seen this liquidity crisis at the UN level. Do you think that the era of multilateral peacekeeping, as we've known it, especially in the last 30 years, is over? And are the regional peace support operations equipped, ready to step up and make sure to play the role that those UN peacekeeping missions were playing, I would say, for a big part of the last 30 years?
Thank you for that. Let me say that multilateralism itself is the way to go in addressing the issue of peacekeeping. What you are referring to is the multilateralism in terms of peacekeeping deployment. So these are two issues here. We have to continue to do the talking, but the discussion ongoing right now is that we want to see African-led forces addressing African problems. In other words, African solution to African problems. And in the recent resolution passed, UN Security Council Resolution 2719, which says that the UN will provide assets contribution to the UN, to the AU, peace support operation on a case-by-case basis. What that means is that they are going to step back. The conflicts we are talking about, the changing dynamics of conflict we are experiencing on the continent is not something outside Africa. So why don't we use our own people? And I think yesterday when we had a panel discussion, I mentioned something here. We can find a homegrown solution because we seem to know the problem. But we need that political will, we need the funding and the commitment and the retraining of our own troops, the realignment of what they are doing before and what they need to do now to be more involved. I think this is where we are. We need to understand that it's not going to be business as usual. More importantly is the fact that AU has what we call AU mandated missions. And this is where you get the support from the UN, access funding that will be given to the AU. If you want to carry out a mission to address a problem because of interest, you have to know that you may not necessarily get the support. So if we are going to do it and be more effective, we have to understand that to be able to be more effective in dealing with the issues, especially in the area where UN US especially have withdrawn withholding funds, and they are all beginning to look inwards. You know about the USA, America First, the geopolitics around Germany. They are all looking within country to see what they can do for themselves. What we are going to be doing now is that we also have to ask ourselves, how are we going to do business differently? And for the countries and the regions, it's important to realize that if you want to go in and support African Union to be able to address the problems on our continent, then we have to make sure that we are authorized, we are endorsed, and the AU recognizes the role we are playing to address a conflict in the region.
Thank you for this. You mentioned the principles of African solutions to African problems, and you also mentioned the role that the regional economic communities play. And we've seen it; they're the first responders in a way, and they often lead the response to crisis in our continent. But what happens when they're divided, underfunded, or part of the problem themselves? Are we relying too much on them? And what needs to change in order at the level of the AU to make this relationship between the AU and the regional economic communities more predictable and make it more effective in responding to the challenges that we're facing today?
Thank you for that. The issue here is this. They are closer to the problem. So, for instance, if you have the issue of SADC, you have the issue of what is happening in DRC right now. You don't want to bring somebody from the East Africa to say, come and solve the problem for me. We have already a regional economic community in the region. They can work around themselves. East African Standby Force is also in the region to support. So you want to make sure that you work with those forces which are closer. The question of interest clearly is there. You cannot take away that. And how much you contribute to the solution is how much interest you have in what is going on. Because don't forget, the way we are structured as countries, sometimes you have 3-4 countries bordering you, which means that a spillover from one country necessarily is going to affect the way you do business, the way you govern your country, the economics, socio-economic challenges that come with it. So yes, we may have those problems, but I think we need to work on our conflict of interest. Clearly, there are issues of conflict of interest that we have to work on. We need to also take advantage of our AU meetings to use political leveraging to be able to address some of the challenges. And more importantly is to express the fact that we cannot continue to do this if the whole aim of having those economic zones are to actually address improve the lives of our people and also ensure free movement of our people. If you don't do that, then whatever political levels that we achieve is not going to help. And therefore, we are going to be seeing the upheavals, the change of government, unconstitutional change of government, and also democratic, decline in the way we do business. So yes, regional economic communities may have their own challenges, but I think they are still the building blocks that we have to use. More importantly, making sure that the conversation around the heads of states when they meet, so let them understand their contribution, their support to the regional bodies are the only solutions that we have to address our regional problems. And that is, I think, the way to go. The problems are there. They are weak, they are underfunded. Luckily, we are getting the response from the UN to say, look, we are going to support you with the money. You have to fill in with the 25%. The argument has always been the fact that, but we are also sacrificing in terms of logistics and the people, the human sacrifice. That is more than 25%. I think that's the issue because don't forget that UN is the one responsible for the overall peace and security on the continent, whether it's Africa, Asia, Europe. So just because it's Africa, you can't tell us to use our 25% when actually we are losing in terms of human lives and values.
So maybe a follow-up on the previous question and the role of the regional economic communities sometimes, and we have an example of that in the DRC situation that we're seeing is the overlapping of mandates. So DRC is member of SADC, is member of the East African Community, is member of ECAS, and sometimes someone can ask the question, which regional economic community should take the lead on this? And sometimes this question is not getting answered, and what we've seen in 2022 is that we've had an answer from East African community, and we've had an answer from later on from SADC, and the level of coordination wasn't good, and this led to an ineffective response to the crisis. So how can we address this issue of overlapping mandates in a way?
Great question. Let me say that when it comes to the issue of who has the mandate to respond, especially when you have a country that sits in two different regimes. Let me use the case of ECOWAS. You know, when the Liberia crisis happened in the late 80s, early 90s, it was the Nigeria and Ghana that went in before other countries joined in. Sometimes we don't need the whole, we also have to identify those with the capabilities, because not all the regions, if you are waiting for all of them to mobilize in terms of having the right equipment, the right personnel to move in, sometimes it will be too late. So maybe we have to begin to ask ourselves, within the regions, who are those capable to actually respond, whilst the rest get ready to join hands to come and support them. And probably that's how we have to look at it, because UN has what we call six deployment scenarios. And one of the deployment scenarios that they normally use without requesting permission from the host country is what we call when it's based on genocide and anything that affects mass murder, in terms of how lot of lives and property are lost. And if you don't step in quickly, something is going to happen. I think we have a mandate of 14 days, if I'm not mistaken, that you have to step in. So in all, what we have to be doing is that in the meantime, when there's nothing happening, perhaps we have to be preparing forces, working with countries with the capability, making sure that they are assured of their funding when they deploy. Sometimes the reluctance to deploy also comes from the fact that what happens when I'm done? And who is going to take up the bill when all is done? And I think that's the reluctance, because don't forget that we are also fighting with our own economic challenges in our individual countries. But at the same time, we also believe in the rule of law. We believe in peace and stability on the continent. And it is our mandate as established within the economic zones to work closely with the African Union to step in. Like I said, it may not necessarily be a mandated AU mission, but once you can make AU authorize it, because of the work, the output that we are going to do, then clearly we can step in. We have to also constitute the force that will be able to do the job. If you wait for the bulk, like I said, have everybody ready, then we are not going to. So we need to define the components within even the economic regions and how they can move in. I think slowly AU is doing what we call moving away from the peace support operation era of doing business, where we are a bit slow. We depend too much on processes and procedures. And now they are shifting slowly to what we call peace enforcement. Because we need to go in quick, we need to go in fast. We have to resolve the issue before it becomes bigger for the entire region to deal with.
Now, for my final question, I want to go back to something you said earlier about the African peace and security architecture and the African governance architecture. You said that they are still relevant, but they need to be, in a way, revitalized, because they're not in their current declinement, not sufficient for today's threats. So what would innovation look like for you in terms of trying to make these mechanisms adapted to today's realities? Is it a question of new institutions, reinterpreting existing mandates, or transforming, I would say, the political culture around prevention and accountability in the continent?
I still stand by what I said earlier. We don't really need to reinvent new institutions to come and solve new challenges. You know, starting something in the beginning is quite challenging, and we all see what is happening. Sometimes maybe we have to let the old go for the new to step in, but we need to keep the institutions we have. I think it's a question of new thinking, rethinking what we do and how we do it. If what we are doing is not giving us the results, clearly we have to change the way we do things to get the results that we need. So the institutions, I think, we just have to be more innovative in a way, restructured and aligned to the new threats that we are faced with. I think for me, those are the things that we have to do. And it's not about building new things, but actually working on the foundation that we have. The foundation that says that we have to maintain peace, stability on the continent. And if the tools we are using today are not ensuring that we achieve the peace and stability on the continent, then we may need to change the tools and adapt, getting new tools to be able to do that. So yes, the structures, we still need them. They are still relevant today, but they have to do a new rethinking, new alignment. And that's the issue where I've said that the discourse must now start taking place. What kind of dialogue are we having? What kind of training are we having? How are we equipping the people involved and ensuring that we have that stability and peace on the continent?
Thank you, Air Commodore. That brings us to the end of this insightful conversation. Thank you for joining us. For more insights and coverage from the conference, visit our website.